Hello and welcome to Stories and Lessons. My name is Amy Ebert, and I'm your host for today's podcast.
My name is Brad Ebert. I'm your co-host.
Welcome back to the show. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Zack and Wayne, the unstoppable brother duo from the hit TV show Lego Masters. Their unique blend of imagination, teamwork, and sheer talent established them as instant fan favorites. So get ready as we dive into their story and what they're up to today.
Yep.
So it's good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So everybody thinks of you guys, obviously from season 2, Lego Masters, as, and still to this day, as fan favorites. And do you feel in any way that you were robbed because you didn't win because so many people wanted you guys to win?
Well, for us, right, definitely when it was happening, right, we were telling ourselves there were definitely many challenges where we felt like, oh man, I really felt like we put a winning build together on that one. Now on the finale, right, I can honestly say I said, that may not have exactly been what we thought was a complete winner, but I think the overall theme of the season was like, oh wow, it doesn't seem like Zack and Wayne are winning as much as they should. So I mean, if that was the theme of season 2, that's what we got at the end. So that's my perspective on it anyway. I think it was just nice to know that so many people seem to share that sentiment. So I said, for all of you fans out there, I greatly appreciate it.
And so you guys have even continued on doing things. You're doing the classes and things now. Are you traveling? Are you staying pretty much on the West Coast? So what does that look like?
So right now we've been partnering up with a company that it's Lego conventions across the country. So we kind of just started that back up this year. For the longest time, right? Just between well, everyone's gonna hear this anyway, right? So Zack has never been particularly good at getting himself out there, right? When they found him on the show, it's only because that was his once every 10 years he decides to go to a convention. He was actually supposed to be on season 1, but the issue is that he couldn't get a partner to be with him who was either had the time or of the right age, which was my other brother. So when season 2 was happening, that was right in the middle of COVID. Everything was shutting down. And I said okay, I have the time. Why not, right? So it was kind of funny to me, at least from the aspect of what it is to be on Lego Masters. There's the Hollywood aspect, and then there's the actual Lego aspect. You can't just have one or the other. You have to have both. So I would say that, thankfully it seems like we still can tour even after it's been 4 years. I said, that's great. People still want to see us. That makes me happy.
So did you guys audition together? How did that process go when you went to audition? Do you have to make builds?
So for the audition process, basically what happens is a bunch of producers out there who actually seek you out, and obviously they have a list of what they're looking for. So they're looking for obviously talent. That seemed to be the theme of season 2, because that collection of talent was way too large. I mean, you had lots of people who tried to be on season 1, they got pushed to season 2. You had a lot of new people who said they weren't sure about season 1, season 2. So I may be a bit biased with saying, but any single person on season 2 could have been the overall winner. It's just when you do this show, you're learning something completely different, the type of building you do. So when you do the audition, right, first there's the initial okay, are you nothing wrong with you background-wise? Do you have the talent? All right. Are you available during these dates? Okay. For our particular season, there were actually 12 teams total. 2 were supposed to be reserved spares just in case if one of the teams didn't work out. So a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that was happening at the same time. But, thankfully my contract to not talk about this was up 2 years ago. So ask me any question you like.
Good. Right. Okay. So here's one that Baron wanted us to ask for you. So you're there for about 6 weeks, right? Even though
Yes.
Was it a 12-week show?
So it's basically every single episode's about 2 to 3 days, and you're contracted out for 6 weeks. But if you get knocked out, you're done that day. So if you get knocked out in episode 1, you're basically kicked out on the 3rd day. Then they just fly you back ASAP. So yeah, if you were there like us, anyone who was there up until episode 10, you were there pretty much for the whole 6 weeks. Now, it was very fascinating because when we got back, everyone said like, "Oh, welcome back." But for us, it felt like it'd been a lifetime. We really did feel like 3 months had passed. But then again, the sleep deprivation was the funny part, right? You get there at 5 o'clock in the morning and you end at 10 o'clock at night. You do that 6 days in a row, and then you get Sunday off. But I mean, like, by that point, right, you're just trying to recover yourself. You're basically going a marathon at a sprint's pace the whole time.
Okay, what are some of the things then that you couldn't talk about at the time that you could say now that you haven't shared yet?
Oh man, the food was awful. Like, I mean, like, generally speaking, right there, like, okay,
Craft services.
well, the first season got to film in LA, right? And then season one was telling me that they got a chance to, like, get the service, like they got the food service from Tom Cruise's company, so it was a lot more interesting than what we ate. Because what we were eating every single day was basically like what McDonald's chicken biscuits every single day. So it gets old
Wow,
after a while.
that's
And then
terrible.
I know, but I mean, like, for the sake of movie magic, right? They use a lot of makeup to make it seem like we're okay, but not really. So, what else could I talk about now that I couldn't say back then? They definitely didn't want you to talk about who won right ahead of time. Let me see. They are also not supposed. I need to go look up my old contract and see what I wasn't supposed to talk about. It's your classic stuff. You're not supposed to talk about anything bad about the show. But I said, like, it's kind of funny. Like you were saying earlier, the audience was able to see what we were feeling at the time, right? If that was the sense of indignation saying, like, what's going on? Clearly, it's not judging the same. We're not being judged the same way as the others. I said, when we were on the show, it felt like on episode one, we went 110%, right? We really only planned on like what being there for one episode. So we said, let's just make a big statement piece and get out. But then that kind of had a weird effect. They changed the rules that you couldn't use like with motors as easily anymore. Because originally season two was supposed to be all about motors, but that's what Zack and me happened to be specialists in. So I said, oh, okay. They kind of like what, changed the bar a bit. So this way that we wouldn't have like an overwhelming advantage. So I'd say that we were always operating 110%. They brought the bar down so you could only really go 100. But I mean, we still did okay, I thought.
Yeah, I think so. Those dragons were pretty cool. And this is you're the dragon right now, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So what does that mean for your family? Do you do anything different? Because I know you guys were talking about how the dragon is so relevant.
Oh, yeah. So Year of the Dragon is the most auspicious time to have children. That's usually like what, the time where like a lot of dragons are born because it represents power, prosperity, like what peace and serenity. But actually, if you look at like what, the Year of the Dragon, right? The dragon has a tendency of being a little bit, it's a time of great change. That's usually what happens. So to me, I said like, all right, we kind of were a little bit quiet for the 3 years after Lego Masters. We said, okay, if there was ever a time for us to come back, this is the time now. So, it's like basically saying right there, it's like, okay, it's now or never. That's how we looked at it this year.
Do you guys continue to do any competitions? Is there any outlets for you guys to still be building?
Well, at the moment right now, Zack did attend a competition down in where was it right there? There was some village down in Southern California where they wanted some Lego Masters and Lego Town to come together. But the content that Zack and me produce is a little bit, I don't know, that's the word for it right there. There are many other people who can do the things that we can do, because like it's all just like what, at some point, just engineering or whatnot. But our brand seems to say like, okay, let's see how we can make your jaw drop. The dragons that we made on the show, it's like, it's amazing, right? Because people still get awed by that. But when people talk about like what our castle on our castle hanging off the wall, we say like, you know what? We finally have recovered enough to say that we can actually make an even better version of that. So, I think that's kind of where it is right there. That show really opened the door for, like I said, like, you know what? If we wanted to do amazing things, we should. So that's kind of like what this year is about. Why not?
And that's a great attitude. Your attitude, obviously, you guys have skill, but the attitude too of just let's just go all out and leave everything out there every time, and that's really the way to do it.
Oh yeah. Well, that's my nick of the woods actually, because Zack is this was the line that got us on the show, right? I told them, they asked us this question, so why do you think you guys deserve to be on Lego Masters? Then I told them straight to their face without even skipping a beat. I said, well, Zack's a genius and I'm never wrong, at least in this situation. So I think I remember, like, because it was just like this, there was a bunch of people on the screen looking at us, right? And they all kind of gave us that look saying, like, what is this guy talking about? But, as they saw us on the show, they said, like, oh, he wasn't kidding. It's
Yes, yes, right. It's actual real confidence.
Oh, well, I mean, for me, because I am an Olympic archery coach in my day-to-day stuff, right? So I tell my students the same thing, right? You only have one shot to, like, get the impression right the first time, because that sets the tone. Because after you set that tone, it's either up to you to raise the bar or to lower it, So I say, like, okay, you cannot settle for less. If you settle for less, then I think I was telling someone about this, right? My mentality is kind of the sign of, all right, if the mind is dead, and you just, like, what, have a coffin in your head, that means that nothing is to be gained. But if you're actually growing, then your mind expands. I think that was the tone I was going for. If you did have the chance of a lifetime right there, you don't have the luxury of trying to play it safe. You gotta go big or go home, and that's literally what the show was, right? Either you go big or you go home. But yeah, I think it was fun.
Exactly. Yes. And now you said that your Zach was originally going to go on. You have a younger brother. Was he under 18 at the time? Was that the age constraint?
Yes, yes.
Mm.
My younger brother was supposed to go on with him, but he was under 18.
Okay. So obviously, I mean, we know that. Are there just the three of you? Have you all been building this whole time since you were kids?
Well, we've been building since, let me see, when I was 4. So that was 28 years ago. That was like some time ago. I was telling everyone right there saying, like, because, there's a lot of siblings in my family, right? The dreaded S word, share. That was the funny thing we were laughing about. Our cousin was going off to college. My aunt gave us all of his Legos. And, when you're a kid, right, you see, like, oh my gosh, look at all of these Legos, right? We were using the original Blacktron, so there was lots of, like, fluorescent greens and blacks and golds and whatnot, which were really cool to see. It really inspires a young mind saying, like, oh my gosh, we like spaceships, we like laser guns, that type of thing, Star Wars, basically. Then at some point it became, all right, if I get good grades, I get a Lego set. If Zach messes up in school, he gets Legos. That was my mom's, like, way of using Lego to encourage us. Now, in my case, right, it was like, okay, I'm doing okay, no big deal. But with Zach, it's like, Zach, you're not. So this was the funny thing, right? Zach has never been particularly good at school, ironically enough.
Huh.
But I mean, if you put him on a test, anything right there about the actual mechanics of it, like literally anything engineering wise, he's there. We later found out that he actually needed glasses when he was like 16 years old. So it turns out his biggest headache is that he just couldn't see the board. Yeah, and then he wasn't willing to talk to anyone about it. So it said, like, oh, okay, that's what you call a misunderstanding that propagates longer than it should. So I could definitely say,
I'm surprised that they wouldn't. I guess that's right. They check more so the hearing or something at the schools. They don't really check the vision, right? There's
I
that you're
know, I
checked, I
know.
think, at one point when you're like 5, and then you're good after that, I guess, with the doctor's office. I think parents have like one eye exam, like, you're good now.
Not to sound mean to anyone right there from California, but, like, the public schools here aren't exactly anything to write home about.
Not Nevada either.
Nah, well, I just tell everyone this right there. It's like, so we, at least for me, right? Like, school was never an issue on my part, right? I think the only thing that ever got me right is that, like, I don't know. I guess that's the funny thing, right? Personally, for me, I think I spent a lot of my youth thinking, like, oh, okay, it seems like the things I'm trying to do seems like people are knocking me down for it, right? And same with Zach, too. It just said, like, oh, okay, it's interesting that we're in the situation we are right now, because we're saying, like, wait a minute, if we had to do it all over again, I mean, there's obviously a time to say no, right? But generally speaking, you want to provide an environment that encourages free thought, kind of see where it goes from there. And, like, that's the biggest thing I kept telling everyone. There is no such thing as a dumb answer. There's only such a thing as realizing it too late. So I say, like, some people have to learn the hard way. That's the only truth, right? You can tell someone exactly what's going to happen, but unless they actually feel it for themselves, it doesn't stick. But, it's like they should have that right to do as they see please. However, that is that can that's always a 50-50 thing. You never know where it's going to go from there. But, that's life.
Well, that's part of the reason we homeschool. So for those same reasons, and and I read the books that these authors have written that were heavily in the education system for years, and then they got out of it and they saw the difference. And there's a lot of good people there, but the whole purpose of doing the schooling is not for free thinking and open debate and doing what you want to do. And one of the things actually that I read this morning was like, what if somebody wants to really learn about construction, but they have to listen to somebody recite a poem? Or the opposite, where they're like, they have to do construction, but they really want to be in poetry. So, having those, that's what we, one of the reasons why we wanted to have you guys on, and different types of guests that we're having on, or people that are doing just different things, something different that's outside of the norm that you can excel at, and it can still take you to new heights in other ways. So what were some of the things you said that there were things when you guys were kids that people were trying to discourage you from, trying to hold you guys back from doing?
Well, I mean, for me, right, it's like, I did have a taste at one point in my life where I did want to draw, right? But then, like, a lot of people are saying, it's like, what the heck are you talking about, Wayne? Because, like, obviously there's a stereotype, right, saying, like, okay, we should just stick with doing math and reading and science, that type of thing, right? That was kind of like what, you're just going to get good grades and then go to school, so be it, like that. I'm a first generation American, right? So like our family didn't realize that there was like a different game when you play here. It's like, you've got to be having a perfect mix of athletics. You've got to have like your volunteer hours. You've got to be like what the president of so-and-so. But, like if you go from a strictly Asian perspective, right, just get high test scores. There is no debate about that. So, I kind of I got put in this mindset of just do everything by the book. And then my response to that was just be fast, be first. That was just the mentality, right? Not to sound funny right there, but I'm 6'1". Had I known that, like, said, wait a minute, athletics had have been an option for me, I would have chosen that because I do love the competition that comes with that. With Zack right there, it's like, it's very interesting because, no one in their right mind could call him dumb. Without a doubt. It's just that he's being put in terrible situations right there where, like, okay, if you see, like, his biggest issue was English. Like, his way of communicating is very simple, but the concepts he understands are mind-blowing. He's a very simple case of, like, okay, don't ask him to explain what he's doing. Let him show it to you, because if he shows it to you, it'll all make sense. But I mean, like, if you're just talking about the written word right there, I'm not we joke about, right? I don't think he's dyslexic or something like that, but for some reason, right, it just doesn't quite go through there. It makes it interesting for us because when you see the work that we're used to doing, right, we're used to, like, what, okay, there's that mode where we just turn our brains off and it just comes naturally. If I could say, like, what we wanted him to do, Zack wanted to be able to, I don't know, it's like, what's the word for it right there? He just enjoyed wandering. Like, that was the thing, right? Being kept in a classroom is the thing that kind of tormented him the most for whatever odd reason, because, you just can't stay still. So, I think that was the thing that I was talking about earlier. Like you were saying earlier, when you're in a public school setting, they do everything they can just to box you up, right? You're just only supposed to be this, and then add that is that. Whether you accomplish anything or afterwards, that's your problem, but it's not very like, this is the life that you lead right now. Let's see if you can hit the maximum potential of what you are. It's kind of like, this is an archery parallel for me, right? Because when you go to when you go to Korea, right? Because I'm Korean trained. I'm not Korean, but I am Korean trained. Their method is basically you have 1,000 eggs and you throw them against a brick wall. The ones that survive, you move along, and the ones who get broken, you leave them behind and let them figure it out for themselves. And the system over there means that you get 1,000 eggs every single time. So it's a constant vicious cycle. Now, the theory is with what we were trying to do here, okay, what if you can actually put that situation where you enhance the egg to its maximum potential and let it find its own spot? That was kind of the mentality of what we were trying to encourage. Because, I guess that's the thing. There's such a thing as burnout, right? It's like you can see it when kids don't like being forced to do something. It's a strange thing to catch, right? But, it's like, there's a difference when they have the actual inner desire to do it versus they are being forced to do it. So I think that's the thing that we were very picky about. There were things you were forced to do and there's things that you wanted to do. it's a tricky balance, but I think we're okay. I mean, if everyone had the chance to talk about their childhood, they always have something to talk about, right?
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
assuming you two are very competitive with each other when you're younger. I'm assuming when you're making builds, right? You're trying to outdo each other. I'm sure that you both grew a lot from that.
Oh yeah, it's a good thing. I think I always complain about having him as a brother to some degree, but it does certainly like what keep you on your feet. You never get this impression that like you can fall behind because that's just how it is, right? You don't want to be the second best. Now I'm the elder brother, right? So I said you're not going to beat me. But it's kind of funny, right? When we were on the show, we were so fully aligned. People could not even
Yeah.
say like, "Wow." It's like there was a time right there when they thought that we were twins or something. I said like, nah, probably not. But one of the things I learned right there, you do need to know when to follow, right? So for me, I spent a long time being a follower. I just listened to what other people have to say. But then, I do understand there is that moment when you say, you know what? If I keep following someone else, I'm always going to put the blame on someone else. I would rather take responsibility for myself so I don't have to say like, okay, I was just following orders. I don't ever want to have that excuse. I want to say this was the choice I made and this was the best call at that time. Zack is a very interesting person to me because, okay, I have a lot of willpower, right? Like I will say, if I can just work hard, I'll make it happen. I used to drive down to San Diego every single weekend for 2 years when I was still like going down to Olympic Training Center. And it's like, you drive at like 12 o'clock midnight, and then you get there around 7. You train for about like 2,000 arrows for the weekend, and you repeat that process for 2 years. So if it's just a matter of getting from point A to point B, that's what I can do. I said, if it's just effort, we can do that. But with Zack, it's so interesting. He right there doesn't like to go from point A to point B, but once he gets there, he can make it happen. We actually put together a gigantic building. It's a 100 by 300-foot building. And I was just telling him, man, Zack, I just can't figure this out. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Because when we built the thing, right, it's actually like a gigantic Lego creation. It's, let me see, 9 panels times 50, and each panel needs about 300 screws. The issue we were having is that when you get one panel up like this, the first one is so flexible, like it literally can fall apart on itself. The only way to get that thing secured is if you build at least 3. So we were trying to get that thing just to get put together. But when we started, we're trying to screw the thing together, the instructions said, do it. Oh, that might be him, actually. You want to do it piece by piece. But then it said, oh, okay, let's see if we can do it in one single arch. And, it's very to easy explain. Zack figured it out. And then after that, what was taking me a day to do just one arch, it wound up becoming, we could get 13 arches done in about maybe one day. Hey, Zack, introduce yourself.
All right. Sorry I'm late, but I'm here now.
No problem. Good to see you, Zack.
Zack, good
to see you too.
He was just talking all kinds of smack about you.
Oh, yeah, I'm kind of used to that. But let's start talking about the good stuff.
No. All good stuff. He's all good stuff. We hope you're enjoying today's episode as much as we loved creating it for you. And speaking of creating content, producing this podcast takes time, effort, and resources. We invest our heart and soul into bringing you valuable and entertaining episodes week after week. If you've been enjoying our show and would like to show your support, we have a fantastic way for you to do so. You can now support the show by making a small contribution through our Support the Show link. It's really easy. Just click on the Support the Show link in the show notes section, and it takes you right to our donation page. By donating, you'll be helping us cover various production costs, upgrading our equipment, and securing amazing guests for future episodes. Every little bit helps us tremendously in elevating the quality of our content. The platform is a user-friendly website where you can contribute easily. Plus, it's a fun way for us to connect with you and show our gratitude directly. We'll be sending some exclusive bonus content, behind-the-scenes footage, and special shout-outs to our supporters. So if you appreciate what we do and want to be part of this amazing journey, consider buying us a virtual cup of coffee or two. Your support means the world to us. Together, we can make this podcast even better and continue delivering top-notch episodes for your enjoyment. We appreciate you for listening and thank you in advance for your support. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, I think it's quite an accomplishment that you guys stayed so aligned together on the show and got in that groove, especially with all the obstacles you have to overcome, being away from family and the food that you're eating, all that.
Yeah, what can I say? When both me and Wayne are here together, we just able to get into that groove and get things done.
I was just telling them how like you figured out how to get that metal building up.
Oh yeah, that was really tricky, man. That was a whole story. Yeah, my dad was supposed to be the one like managing that whole project, but he left over to the Philippines, and I was like, "Hey, I don't want to do it. It's a lot of work." But then my sister came in and she was like, "Zach, you better help out, or we're never gonna forgive you for not helping out." And I was like, "Oh man."
Yeah, he's easily affected by guilt.
That helps. That helps. And that's your parents probably always kind of instilled that everybody contributes, right? That's
Oh yeah, yeah. Growing up, my mom and my dad, or maybe my mom more, was always saying, "It's like always help out your elder brother. Always help out your
Family.
siblings. Family first.
Always help out your family, not just me. Although you could help me more, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I help you the most."
Well, more
So
than
obviously
most.
you guys are the closest.
Say again?
So obviously you two are the closest. Are you the two oldest?
Yeah,
Your
we're the
family?
two oldest. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're a lot different from our younger siblings because I kind of feel like when it comes to like first generation Asian, whatever, there's a whole like
Dynamic.
whole dynamic.
Yeah,
there,
there's a
right?
whole dynamic.
Right. It's yeah, I think me and my brother felt that because we were both born in the Philippines, even though it's like we didn't really
Grow up there.
grow up there. Is like technically that's a technicality. Is like we were born in a different country.
Well, the way I look at it, right, it's like, because, obviously by the time that my younger siblings were born, my family was much more aware of how to succeed on this education thing right there. So me and Zach kind of just figured out, okay,
It kind of felt like me and Wayne were experimenting. Kind of like, how are we supposed to get through this country?
yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funky, right? So for me, I remember when I was about to go to school, this was right in the middle of 2008 housing financial crisis, right? So that was like, I said like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. You mean to tell me like, at the time, right, the biggest pressing concern was student debt. And I said like, okay, I don't want to go into a college situation where, like, at the time I was thinking about going to UOP, and at the time, right, they were asking for like what 60,000 a year for like what their tuition, and I said like, honestly, it doesn't make sense from a strictly financial standpoint. So I decided to go off to the Philippines and become an accountant over there, which is dramatically cheaper. But of course, it does harden you a little bit. With Zach right there, it was very interesting because I was just telling everyone the same thing right there. It's like, if you put Zach in a college room right there, in an engineering one, he should be the one teaching it. That was my general feeling. Like, you can listen to this person, but then Zach will actually show you how it actually looks. I was just telling before that, you don't need to write or explain. You just need to show what you're doing, and it explains itself.
Well, I mean, being able to write down your thoughts, being able to explain your thoughts to other people, right? Because I guess when you're that creative type, it doesn't really come to words first, right? It's just a thought in your head, but it's not like a straight out word, right? So it's like you got to learn the words that people use, right? The nomenclature, right? So then you can like
the jargon,
right?
There you go.
So it's like you can.
And your brain is almost working faster than how you can say it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say that that's definitely, it definitely feels like that. It's like, it actually takes me like 2 or 3 minutes to like digest whatever people are saying to me and then come up with a response. Cause it's like, I feel like I got a dictionary in my head I got to search through. It doesn't like just come instantaneously.
See, this is the part I was complaining to about the Hollywood execs right there. He speaks genius. You're going to have to take a little time right here. That was the thing that made it so funny, right? When we were on the show, there was always a camera up in your face and a mic right next to your throat. So, it's like there were those times right there where people were like saying like, what are you thinking? Are you talking to the brick? I said, no, we're not talking to the brick. We're thinking about what we're doing. So that was a very hilarious experience. Right? It's like when you're on the show, it's like they're only using about maybe not even 1% of all the filming they use. So it's interesting what they decide to show on the show.
It's kind of like they ask us to mention so much stuff, and you're surprised actually that how much of it they don't use. Right? Yeah, right. You were saying it's like you ask why did they show that clip, and then you also ask why didn't they show the other stuff. Right? It's like because there's some other stuff behind the scenes. It's like they should have kind of brought out or mentioned.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing some stories about Will Arnett and Jamie, some funny stuff that maybe happened with them.
Let me see.
You go first.
This was like during COVID, right? So actually, our interactions with Amy and Jamie, and then even Will Arnett, was actually supposed to be very limited, right? And because behind the scenes, we're all wearing masks and like face coverings or whatever, right? And
Oh, wow.
the only times we were actually allowed to like talk with Amy and Jamie was when we were on set, and it's really hard to have a one-to-one conversation, really get a feel of a person when cameras are on and then they have mics and then earpieces and then people are talking in their ear. You're talking straight to their face, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, what did you want me to say? Right? It's really interesting. It's because like even some of the jokes is like, is that really your joke or someone else's joke? Are you saying that, or is that some person like in Denmark or I don't know, the North Pole, South Pole, telling you what you got to say? Right? So it's really hard to have that conversation. And then also Will Arnett, his voice never turns off, right? The way he talks on TV, that's the way he talks. Like if you're like, right? So it's like there was even this one driver who was telling us is like there was one time Will Arnett asked him to help him move some couches, and the guy was just telling us the whole time that like that voice never turns off, even when he's back at home. Right, and then
so it's pretty easy to be that character then, because that's just who he is.
yeah. Or maybe it's just like what do you call that? Where you really go very far in your acting. It's
your persona, or like
no, not persona. Method acting.
Yes.
Maybe it's method acting. I don't know.
Yes, it's just easier to never turn it off.
Yeah. Easier to never turn it off.
I'm not sure if we're not supposed to talk about this, but like on season 1, right? I think it was either he was in the middle or after a divorce, right? So I remember he was like saying a lot of comments about like well, maybe you don't want to add that part right there, but there was definitely like a lot of those scenes where he was breaking stuff. He would actually have a guy here with a whiteboard telling him all these crazy jokes, and then like you wouldn't ever see the times when he starts bursting. It's like like my wife. Oh, sorry, my ex. To me, I thought that was very funny, but obviously that's not good for a TV show. So, yeah, I mean,
we're trying to be family friendly here.
Oh, my bad. That was my feeling, right? I said like, when you're on that show, right? I mean, definitely that's the thing. You're only seeing one perspective at any given point, right? So to me, I thought that was very interesting about Will anyway, because like, when he's actually having a sincere conversation with you, it's usually on his more quiet moments. So like, there was that time when my friend had just passed away, right? He actually did pull me aside and say, hey, I'm pulling for you, right? I appreciate that. Because like all the other times, right, you don't really know, but at least there he said like, I appreciate that. It's.
I'm trying to think of like who on the Lego Masters cast actually probably had a better experience with them. Maybe like Phil and Marina, they had pretty good experience.
Well, Phil and Maria liked Will a lot before, and then Mark and Steven and Modo and Paris were on good terms with the judges, Amy and Jamie. Yeah. I guess that's the thing, right? It's just like Zach was saying, right? It's like you guys see Amy and Jamie and like Will Arnett, but we see all the producers behind the scenes, right? It's that person in their ear. And then they actually had someone, right, who was wearing a full rig with a camera and mics so they could actually let the Hollywood executives from California see what you're doing.
Yeah, I was kind of feeling like we were just too much in our own groove to really have to spend time talking with the judges or talking with Will Arnett, right? We were honestly talking way more with the other Lego Masters while we were on Lego Masters.
Yeah, do you still have relationships today with a lot of those people?
Oh, yeah. We have group chat and everything. We hang out on conventions and we plan out builds and everything. Yeah, that's typical Lego community stuff. And it's like AFOL kind of adult fan of Legos kind of stuff. It's like, it's kind of a community you can bank on always.
I did notice something, and you're talking about how the producers are telling people as far as the judges and different things on how to be. But I did notice a difference with Jamie's demeanor in the first season and then the second season. It seems like he was a lot tougher on people in the first season, kind of real cutthroat, like, this is terrible. I mean, that's a little extreme, but it seemed like they might have had him warm up a little bit.
I want to say they were probably getting a lot of cues from maybe production, right? And I want to say that was kind of like the tone they brought us into. in Lego Masters was like, this is a serious competition. You better treat everyone that you're talking to like an enemy. You shouldn't be divulging secrets with each other or having conversations outside of production, right? But we all know we're Lego Masters, and people who play with Legos are really not those kind of people, right? Are actually generally very helping.
Well, I mean, the people
we all want to see everybody succeed, right? And so I think maybe there was like a camaraderie moment, like after the first episode. It's like, hey, a lot of this production stuff doesn't make sense in the Lego scene.
See, that's the thing, right? We really have to give a shout out to Tim Kroll. So, like, you know, like that was the team of Tim and Zack from like season 2. So right away from the get-go, right? Because we had 1 week leading up to like the actual thing, because there was a quarantine just before they actually assess if you can actually be on the show or whatnot. And like, you know, Tim made a point to say, hey, everyone download this app called Telegram, right? An instant messenger group. So from there, we were always able to freely communicate with each other, you know. And I think that was wise, because I mean, like, you know, the people who filmed this show also film, a lot of that staff was actually from Survivor. So like, you know, what is that drama they're talking about, right? If you guys have ever been Survivor, right? They want to catch you saying something terrible about someone else, and then they're going to show it to you to the clip and say, like, did you really say it about me? And that's where all the...
Yeah, right. I mean, I remember that in like a little bit of like Land and Sea challenge. And I just remember they were trying to get me to talk about Wayne, what Wayne's going to build, or speculate what he's going to say. And it was like, hey, honestly, I'm pretty sure Wayne will be able to handle himself, right? I'll just take care of what I can take care of that's in front of me, right? But I mean, if you want to talk about my build, that's fine. But I really honestly can't tell you what Wayne's going to be building, right?
Oh boy, that was a bad challenge for me. Like, honestly, if I had to be so honest, I said, man, that's like, you know, I went through all the 5 phases of grief, like when like 1 second I said, oh my gosh.
And you know, when I was telling you, hey, while we're building, like, you better start trying to pick up whatever you can while we're building. Like, learn on the job, learn on the spot.
So let me be very clear about this, okay? You're talking Da Vinci level stuff versus, like, you know, my ability to build sets right there. Because, you know, it cannot look like we're so uneven. Now, what made me laugh about this, right? It's like, so when we did that challenge, I said, you know what? This is as good as I'm going to get. I'm just going to take it in early, so be it right there. Then I see this guy right here on this table saying, like, Zack, what are you doing? There's only 10 seconds left. And he's like, no, I got it. And my heart break, right? Because as he's bringing it over, right, the tail falls off. I said, like, dang it, Zack.
And you see, for me, stuff like that is no big deal, right? Like, stuff was happening like that all the time, even before that challenge, right? And so it's just funny. That type of pressure, like, you felt it, but I didn't. I mean, that happens all the time.
Well, right? I know, it's just funny to me, right? Because, like, you know,
there was like worse stuff, which was like that happened, and then people were not eliminated.
I know, but that's the thing, right? That's the
even like yeah. It's like they're honestly not gonna throw you out just because a piece of your Lego build is gonna like fall down.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's like, that was the thing, right? Do you remember after like what the second episode, right? The challenge where everything blows up, you know, like literally right after they right after all the builds were blown up, right? Great, so be it from there. A guy from production behind there, he literally came out and said, like, everyone, we just want to let you know that you have to understand that these rules are subject to change at any given point. So, you know, that's kind of their disclaimer that they're going to really change things up, right? You know, if they want you...
Can adjust who gets to stay, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
They can fix it. They can fix it. That's all I'm trying to say. I said, like, if you give them any excuse, they will use it against you. That's all I'm saying. For me, I'm a button down guy, right? I said, you're not going to
So I remember in the Land and Sea challenge, right, where... Right. I feel like this is one of the experiences that kind of just reminisce. I can remember very easily with Will Arnett. It was a piece of my tail fell down, right, on my build, right, and Will Arnett comes straight up to me. Hey, Zack, are you doing okay? How's your build? And then all of a sudden, you see the cameras just zooming in on you, and I'm looking, and it's like, what are you trying to get out of me? Right? It's like, I feel like it's I plead the fifth kind of thing, right? Right? Or what's it called?
Yeah, I plead the fifth.
It's like, hey, I don't want to give you anything you're going to use against me, but it's like, right?
Yeah, it's hard to, the tone that you seem to getting from us right now said like, oh, we really had to be careful, right? Because, you're basically volunteering yourself. Like, it's basically you're inside a police interrogation box, and anything that you say and do will be used against you, but in a more
Yes.
family-friendly way.
Yeah. And you know
Yeah, if
what?
we can get more views from it, we will, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there was one situation when we were doing like that shake tower challenge, right?
Yeah, the
tower.
shake table
Right.
challenge.
And honestly, that was a kind of a tough challenge for me anyway, because I had a hard time like putting stuff together to the base that they were giving us, right? And there was something about it where right, I kind of just felt like the producers were kind of maneuvering like the story a bit or whatever, right? And because they started asking me questions, okay, how do you feel about this build? Um, Here's what I think you should say if you get the bottom two, or if you get the top three, this, and this, right? And then that was like a warning signal in my head. It's like, okay, something's funny going on here, right? And in that episode, Wayne really wanted to hold on to the golden brick, right? And I felt like maybe it's better that we just use it, because I feel like if we don't use it, they're just going to take it away from us anyway, right? And that's what I kind of was saying in my head, right? And that was actually a really big moment, because they were about to ding us on a technicality for our build, because we built it like 2 studs too short or whatever, or not wide enough. Right. And it's like, oh, when were you going to pull that out? Right. You didn't tell me that when you were having this conversation.
And they didn't show it on the show. So everyone thought that we used the golden brick for no reason. But I said, like, no, it's like
that was actually a very dramatic moment for us. It's like we want to hold on to the golden brick, but it's like it feels like you guys are just trying to take it away from us anyway. Right. And then right. And then it all kind of lapsed over on us, is like they were listening to our conversations, even though we're not on the production set. They were listening into like the waiting area and all that kind of stuff, because I'm talking with Wayne about all this stuff, right? And it's like, oh man, you're starting to talk about stuff which should have been a private conversation, right? And it's like, hey, you said you're not recording us while we're in our break rooms, right? And that's when me and Wayne were kind of like telling ourselves, okay, let's start using sign language and everything.
Oh yeah, yeah, they didn't like that. We made like a whole way of communicating that they couldn't pick up on it, and they only found out on episode 11. So that was nice.
Yeah.
That's good. It's like a football tells in baseball, right? Like,
yeah. You gotta throw signs, not gangster signs, but just like useful signs. They thought we were gang. It was so funny, right? We told them we were sushi chefs. We told them we were ninjas. We told them we were gangsters. Said like it was so funny. At some point, I kind of had to laugh, saying like, it's like they're like this, But then after like the episode 1, they were like, oh my gosh, right? So it was, to me, it was up to us to like what dropped the ball. I think that was the thing that kind of got me on that one. I should have realized it sooner. If you treat it like an honest competition, you'll go crazy. At least that's what it felt like to me, right? To me, I think on episode 4, that was the follow-up challenge. We said, you know what? Let's give them nothing that they can ding us for, because that's just how I look at things, right? I can't control what you do, but you can't control what I'm doing. And if we're going to go here, we're going to go 110%. Fine. If you want 111%, we'll go there, That was just the pace, right? Grow, fight, grow stronger, Don't give them anything on you. Because that's how it felt like, right? Every single time you go on there, right? You're like, because like you're having to make these builds day after day after day. I mean, that was something that I didn't realize was going to be an issue, right? I thought we were going to get at least 1 day of recovery, but no. Like one time we filmed 2 episodes in 1 day, and like literally someone had just got kicked off, and then we had to build right. It said like that really messes with your frame of mind.
Yeah,
if you don't know in advance what the plan is, that's going to get you off track for sure.
Yeah, and it also felt like some of the other Lego Masters knew way more what was coming than us, right? Because some of the other Lego Masters were really educated themselves on how these Lego Master things go, right? They're able to talk with previous Lego Masters, and then they also were paying attention to all the Lego Masters series which were happening outside of the United States, like the Australia Lego Masters, right? And so and then also some of the Lego Masters over there had people that they work with on set who helps with like preparing the Legos and all that kind of stuff.
Hey, that one we have to keep secret right there.
Well, I mean, it's been a couple of years. I mean,
No. That one right there, I want to talk about that one later, right? But basically, it's like one of the contestants, like, one of the temps they have in the background, and they were co-workers in another company. So I said, like, okay, I see what's going on there.
So it's like while we were on Lego Masters, there's like this level of paranoia we're going through, right? Because we really don't know how the season's going to go or what direction production wants to take it to, and it's like you don't really know who are they taking seriously and then who's like the fall guys, right? And so it's it's really stressful. It's because it's like, so it's like, you could joke about me, but I'd like to be in on the joke, right? That's the way I want it to be, right? It's like, hey, you want us to be like a couple of goofball ninjas, sushi chefs and all that, right? It's like, hey, I'm 100% down for that, but it's like I kind of need a heads up, right? Do you want me to treat this like a serious competition, or is this kind of like just clowning around kind of thing?
And I guess in the day, right? It's like whatever we did, it worked, right? Because when they did the final cut, it was great, apparently. Like,
I think it was really good. They never caught us like talking bad about the other Lego Masters. I mean, we have comments about the other Lego Masters, but it's like they never got that on camera.
Well, I mean, that was the thing that kind of got me right there. It's like we were trying to be so friendly on day one, right? But then a lot of people didn't know who we were. We didn't know who they were, right? So I said, Zach, I don't care.
Yeah, when it comes to Lego Masters also, it's like, or Lego builders in general, it's like all the other Lego builders had a little bit more pedigree. Like they've been to more conventions and they publish more work. As opposed with me, I'm a little bit more of an independent builder, and I don't think they really knew what I was going to be able to pull out off in Lego Masters. Even I didn't know.
Well, that was the thing.
Obviously.
Well, that was the thing, right? It's like we were just, I just told this to Zach. I said, hey, just go big or go home, right? But that was the funky thing, right? It's like before then, everyone was kind of like what standoffish, like, yeah, we know what we're doing. But after that, there was a clear, like, okay, like we wanted.
There was definitely like a tone shift. It's like when we were going in there and I'm just talking with everybody, right? It just sounds like everybody felt super confident, knew what they were doing. It's like they're all going to win, right? But then after like the first challenge, it's like everybody just started to like... Right, the way they were talking about it was way different.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
I don't know. It felt funky, right? It's like, can you imagine you're basically stuck on a desert island by yourself, and I got this guy on there with me too, so it worked out well, right? Because like you really are just like you are isolated, but thankfully you have a partner, so that makes it more bearable. Because if you really had to do it by yourself, man, it would drive you crazy. So it worked out well.
And it could go one of either way, because we've seen just about every season. So it can go one of two ways. Either it makes the bond stronger and you build even better together, or you see some where the relationship starts to crack a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, see, a lot of the Lego Masters are actually people who've never worked with each other before, right?
That's
they kind of just randomly put two Lego builders together, and it was like if I were to be like the judge of like teams, is like some of these builders shouldn't be put together, right? They build on way different levels and they have way different ideas, right? But like when I'm working with my brother, it's like he may not be the best builder, but it's like I grew up with him, right? Yeah. We can talk on we are able to communicate on the same level, right?
Without even saying things, probably sometimes.
Yeah, that's why we can use hand signs to like communicate ideas.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to go back. You were talking about how it being tough, and I did just read this. We just read this, I think, yesterday. I didn't know about this, but it's that they had said that because of the stress level, for when anybody is eliminated, they have a psychiatrist that the people can talk to when they're eliminated afterward, because there's all this built up. Yeah.
Yes. There is a psychologist that we all get to talk to, but that's not my psychologist, right? That's like production psychologist, right?
Yeah.
How sure are we that this is like a real psychologist or like a Hollywood psychologist, right? Right? It's like,
oh, that's a whole other conversation,
right? It's like, should I really be talking to a psychiatrist that was sent to me by production? Right? They might be in on it. right?
Right. They're trying to make it be messed up even more.
I have feelings about that.
Right? They might just be reaffirming whatever production is telling us is like, okay, you
Stockholm
can't handle
syndrome thing going on,
right.
They're like, we abused you, and now we're going to come in and save you.
It's Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah,
oh my gosh!
that's what it's gonna feel like. It's like they're gonna place the blame on us, the builders, not production. You know, right? It's like, hey, production did this to me, and then the psychologist will say, you're crazy. you know? You know?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, now I'm beginning to understand why production didn't like us too much. There was times where we were a little too real. It's like there was that time when they were asking us to be a little bit more sensitive. I said in coming from anyone else, I would take you seriously, but with the stuff that we had to grin and bear right there, I think you guys can get off your high horse for just 2 seconds. I mean, that's just the reality, right? I get it. They framed it as this is the opportunity of a lifetime. We should be grateful for this and go 110%. And just like you're doing it for this and that. It said, we are basically in a situation where it's our first time doing something we've never done before, and all of this uncertainty, right? You only need to know that you gotta stick with what you got. If you want us to change, I've seen what happens when you try and pull it on an act. The thing that we did on the show so well is that we were just being ourselves, because that's how we are in real life, but then at some point, right, I learned something right there. It's what they would like is something they can control. I mean, can you participate in the fantasy? And apparently the fantasy that they made wasn't something that they felt that we could be a part of. So that's how I look at it anyway. But, we're still okay for it. I mean, obviously, you had after your earlier question, right? A lot of people felt like we got robbed. I said, it was a situation where, they rob you bit by bit, and then it becomes big. That's how it felt like to me, right? I wasn't surprised, right? But they got you to hope, and that's what made me feel annoyed, saying you really gave me the idea that maybe you were gonna do right by us, and I said, nah, after that, no more.
Yeah, I remember there was this one part where it's part of me just felt like production was never really on our side, but I guess that's the skepticism every single team has to face, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of never leave yourself any room for taking it easy on yourself, right? You always take it hard on yourself. Right, and you're always trying to do your best because you don't know when they're gonna flip that switch. It's we hate you guys, right? We love you, we hate you.
Yeah.
Right, right. You really don't know when they're gonna flip that switch, and so just the fact that they do it once. It's that just ruins your trust in them at all for the entire season. Right?
Yeah,
It's
you're not gonna let your guard down
I
again.
felt like I was really trusting that this was gonna be a fair competition. For the first episode, but then once it hit the second episode or the second challenge, I was like, no, I can't take any of this seriously, because especially with Don and Jack, the way they were eliminated, behind the scenes while we were on their set, it really did not seem fair at all. Not fair at all.
So that did not seem like the first people that should have gone home.
Yeah, because they made it really, really they really stuck it to us. It's if any of our figures fall over, you're going home, right? They really made that a big point. And you know how long I was stressing out with my brother? It's hey, Wayne, we really got to make sure that these figures aren't going to, right? And it's this is a whole argument. Wayne is telling me, Zack, why aren't you building anything? Why aren't you building anything? Why aren't you building anything? It's because I'm trying to make sure we can accomplish the first goal, not letting any of these things get blown up.
Right. Yeah, one person's going to have something fall off, right? So you feel okay.
Well,
and then that still isn't the criteria.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was just hilarious, right? Because that was just a thing. Obviously it's the follow-up, right? So on that explosion episode right there, they actually made such a big deal about the explosive, right? Oh my gosh, these explosives are too powerful, right? If you mess this up, you could die. So make sure you listen to us, right? But then the first explosions were so weak, they did nothing. So they made an executive decision later to increase the amount of explosives. So I guess that was just kind of the funny thing, right? Maybe what we didn't realize right there, we should understand. It's okay, this is a show at the end of the day, right? The Hollywood executives right there are just trying to get, it doesn't matter who wins at the end of the day, right? As if they can't inspire love, they'll inspire hate and grief. So I said, it's both the same thing to them. So, it is what it is.
Yeah. In the end, it boiled down to just build something cool, and then explain it later. Figure out what the explanation is later, or
Make up the story that,
yeah, make up a story afterwards, right? Because it's like they made it a big deal. Oh, you better have a story with your build, but it's like,
Yes.
no, that's not how this is going, right? The way you guys are doing this competition is like you're really not making any kind of good incentive for us to like prioritize on the story, right? Right now, it's just build something spectacular and then come up with the story afterwards, right? It's like
they're going to kind of push. They're going to push the narrative a little bit anyway, right? With the story, they're going to kind of push you in a certain direction with that anyway. So
yeah.
put your time in the building.
Yeah, it was funny, right? Because like I don't know if you remember our whale episode, right? The one where we built that gigantic whale. Yeah, but
cool.
I remember that one was a very fun build for us because I remember the way that Zack built that frame. It's like he had built it in such a unique way because everyone else was just trying to connect to the brick, right? But Zack literally just hung a frame on top of it, and like I don't know what they were thinking, but the judges at the time were saying like, you guys are building a whale skeleton. That's not very interesting. You really need to think out this story. But then like I think like an hour later we showed we're not building a whale skeleton. We're building a whale. Then we realized something. Said, okay, I think when the whale hit about 5.5 feet, we said, this is probably too big, right? Like we could make it even bigger. Like the way Zack built, I think we really could have made that thing 10 feet long, but that would have been kind of pointless.
For me, I wasn't even paying attention to what the judges were saying at that point, right? It's just hey,
tune them out eventually.
Right. Okay. It's like, okay, I got this idea. I'm going to build it. Right. I'm just going to build it. Right. And then if we finish a little bit before the clock ends, we'll talk about it. Right. And then we'll pivot. Right. Right. It's like if we're missing something, we pivot. Right. But make sure we build something awesome first. Right. And so that also happened with like the pig challenge. Right. It's like, right. They're saying, oh, it better be this and that. Right. And then we kind of I just said, okay, I'm just going to build a flying pig, or I'm just going to build this. Right. It's going to have wings or whatever. Right. And then the moment they say, hey, I don't like this. Okay, pivot.
Well, this was our pride moment, right? They were never able to put me and Zack in the bottom two at any point on the show, right? So when we did that particular episode, they had to invent the bottom three. I said, like, you guys are so insulting.
Honestly for me, right?
Bottom three now, huh?
Right.
I know. I said, like, this is
right. Honestly, I'm saying it's like as long as we make it to the end, I'm happy, right? I'm even just happy we made it through the first challenge, right? And so it's like you can't really make me feel bad, right? If you're not going to send me home, right? If you're going to send me home, just send me home right now. Just do it right now, right? But it's like
I know, but it's like it's like if you can win, why not? I mean, that's all it is, right?
Yes.
I mean, you don't
keep going for it because you're building a fan base also.
Yeah, I mean, like,
well, I don't know if I'm sure you're not thinking that at the time, but it ends up happening.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that was the funny thing, right? I mean, for us, like you have to understand, right, from the dynamics of our family, right, it's hard for any of our relatives back in Asia to say anything about us because they're like, hey, we were on television, right? And we were on television, something positive. So on a strictly like what in terms of who you can brag about, said like we were on television and everyone likes us. It was so funny. We were in like with Michigan a few days ago. It said like we met a few people from Belarus. We met them from like Turkey. It's like, wow. It's like, I think that's the thing we got right there. We were able to connect with people from a strict like, oh, okay, these guys are cool. And like, they are capable of great things. I think that's the fundamental thing right there. I don't think we're anything special in that regard. We just happened to do something really well and showed it well. Because like that was the thing I did not let happen on the show.
Well,
right?
Well, on Lego Masters, right?
No, because like that's what happened, right? They would, can you imagine that when they were judging the dragon, like we explained ourselves so well, we built so well, and even then, right? All three, so Will, Jamie, and Amy were told in their earpiece, you have to find something to criticize about this build, right? So that's when they started using the term blocky. And then I said, like, but then Zack came out and they were saying, like, no, blocky is a good thing. That means it's fat, which means it's strong and abundant. And, they were like, oh, I think, that was the thing that made me, like, that's what kind of got me right there saying, like, if you give them an opportunity, anything at all, right? It's like, I hate to say this, right? It's easier to apologize than ask for permission. That was what we discovered right there. Don't ask for their permission to do something. If you have to apologize it after the fact, but don't get stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to take some of your cool classes?
Ooh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's all you, Wayne.
Well, so me and Zack now have our own company, Brick Art Motion. So, we're planning on holding classes regularly in the Las Vegas area going forward. So, just feel free to follow us on Instagram, which is at Brick Art Motion. If you want to contact us at our Gmail, it's the same thing, brickartmotion@gmail.com. Follow us there, and, hopefully you can catch us again soon. If you have any questions or any curiosities, you're more than welcome to ask us then. But thank you so much for having us on your show.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's a true pleasure.
All right, thank you.
Hey, we'll have to do this again sometime because someone has to show up on time, right?
We will.
I tried like that.
We will for sure.
Better late than never.
Always great to see you guys. Having said that, if you haven't done so already, we are now accepting enrollments for Level Up Goal, our accountability program designed to support you in achieving your next goal. We've dedicated a significant amount of time and effort to create this program and will continue refining to ensure you receive massive value throughout your journey. Enrollment is currently available for a limited time. Here is the process to enroll and get started. Simply go to levelupgoal.com or click on the link in the description that takes you to the website where you can sign up and be a part of the coolest crew in town. Get in early because we are capping the amount of enrollment opportunities available, of course. For more stories and lessons, check out some of my other episodes in the series. Thank you for showing up and be well.